So, welcome. Once again, this is number 6 time that we are here, and it's always a pleasure to be at this conference. This year, however, I'm going to do something new, something I haven't done before. This is a technical conference, but we actually put in 5 slides, which are kind of marketing material. But we're only going to use, let's say, 4 minutes on this. But it's important because there's actually a message in there that I think even us technicians need to realize and fully grasp and understand. So the first one is this one. The 2009 challenge was kind of issued in 2014 when we passed the mark of 100,000 customers and all over 1 million users, which is phenomenal for a product like NAV. So the challenge was, let's use the next 5 years getting to the next 100,000. So we spent the entire product life getting 100,000 up till 2014. We spent 5 years getting to the next 100,000. And that is really a phenomenal feat if we can do that. And we actually are underway doing this. We are following the target here. We've done well in these 2 years, so let's keep it up. And this wouldn't be possible without you guys, so thank you, really.
Thank you. Give yourself a hand.
Yeah. Give yourself a round of applause. You really deserve it. See, me as a marketing guy, this really isn't working out, I know. But anyways, we'll get this done with quickly. So let's do the next 3 years. That's super. And then another thing that I think we need to realize, that's a little bit look of the market and the market size and where we're actually moving and why Microsoft is doing what we are doing. So if we look at the 2009 challenge from a perspective of the market, how big is the market? And according to the analysts, we are looking at a market in Europe of just about 3.5 billion euros. And that's kind of split up into the on-prem market, as we know it. That'll have a size of just around 1.5 billion euros. But what's interesting here is the year-over-year growth of this market. And you see they actually predict that this is very low. We all know this, but it's there, and this is important. The other half is kind of like the online market, the up or emerging market of the cloud. And if you take these two and add them together, that's actually just about half. And the missing piece is the on-prem for CRM. So if you look at the market in 2019, we are basically at the breaking point of the on-prem versus the cloud business will have just about the same size. That's important. And of course, we as Microsoft cannot ignore this fact, and we are not. But the most important thing here is to realize we are not stopping the on-prem world. It's an important part of our strategy, which is why the "and" word is emphasized up here. We are going to invest in the on-prem product, NAV as you know it, and we are going to invest in Microsoft Dynamics 365 for financials. I finally learned to say that without errors as well. So that's the online offering and as well as the on-prem world. And to show you what's going on here, this is kind of the roadmap, and no, the roadmap does not stop in 2019. We're just running out of space. We'll continue after 2019. So you see all the products listed here. You see we have releases on all of them, and we'll continue to do that. There's absolutely no change in what we're doing here. We will support both the on-prem world and the cloud. And the last slide is this one, which is an interesting slide because that actually shows the shift. We speak, when we're talking about going to the cloud, we speak of something we call the funnel. And you should basically think of this, you start from the top, and in the normal world, you want to sell something, you make people aware of this. So you advertise, you do a lot of things. And a lot of people start thinking about this, and then as you go along, more and more kind of fall off, and you end with some paying customers down at the bottom. In the traditional world shown here on the left side, you spend marketing in achieving the 2 first bars here, right? So you did the awareness and the interest, that was kind of up to the marketing, and then they phoned you or called you, and then the salespeople came along and then started, to process these guys to actually end up being customers. This is kind of changing when you move to the cloud, and this is why this picture is important. If you look at the right side, you see the marketing, the self-service on the internet. Think about when you go scan for something on the internet. You go Google it with Bing, of course, and then you find it there. And after you found it, you go download the trial, you try it out, and you need to kind of be wowed by this to kind of install it. And so otherwise you drop off. And this is important because it tells you something about the software we need to develop in the future. We need to be able to wow people. We need to enable them to be self-serviced. Far more down. And then salespeople come in at the very, very end to do upselling or whatever is possible. That's a huge change, and that's really to the cost of sale is really changing from the on-prem world to the cloud. And speaking of the cloud, this was the Microsoft slide, so getting to the cloud, I'll leave it to Vincent to continue the talk here.
Thank you, Thomas. So, good morning to everybody. It's good to be back in Antwerp. Before we continue, and I'll talk a little bit about what we've been doing about the product and how we got it to the cloud before we get to NAV. But before I do that, when Thomas and I prepare for the keynote, we always very eager to show you guys all the new stuff we've been working on and all the new features. But there's a lot of other sessions that you guys should attend, so we don't want to spoil it for the other guys. So when you go and see the trailer for a movie, and you say, "Wow, that's a good movie," and you go and watch the movie, and then you realize that all the fun parts of the movie you've already seen in the trailer. So we don't want to do that at the keynote. What we've tried to do is show you just just a teaser for the other sessions, and we'll tell you which sessions, if you want to hear more about the topics, which session you should go and hear more about it. So we're just going to scratch the surface here. So getting to the cloud. There's no secret. We spend a lot of time in the development team to take our product and the NAV stack and move it to the cloud. So what does that mean? I'm going to give you a little bit of technical insight because we are Tech Days and about what it means. But before that, how many of you have tried Dynamics 365? Show of hands. Yeah, a few of you. Okay, so if you haven't tried it, I recommend you do that, and it's very simple. You go to that page, see the URL, or you just search for, as Thomas was saying before, just Google it with Bing, and you'll find the Dynamics 365 page, and you just have to click on that button and fill out a few informations. Give your email, and you'll receive an email. You'll click on, and that will bring you in a matter of a few minutes. We're provisioning a full instance of Dynamics 365, which is a full NAV stack in the cloud, which is for you to play with. So this is Dynamics 365. This is how it looks like. So when you receive the mail, you'll get a link that will bring you to that page. And we have added a couple of fun stuff for you to discover the product. So it's aimed, obviously, to people who don't know NAV. So it's not you guys in that room. I know you know the product very well. But I encourage you to go and play with it. We have a couple of walkthroughs that will show you how to do different basic stuff in NAV. But just go and try it out. And you'll see also how much it resembles NAV. All right, so getting to the cloud. What we did is something that is often referred as a lift and shift approach. It's not something we invented. A lot of companies, products are doing that. What it means is that you have an on-prem product, a traditional on-prem product, and you lift it to the cloud, which means you take whatever you have in your on-prem, whatever components you have. It's a little bit of oversimplified picture of architecture, of course. I just draw the NST, the database, and the web client, but it's a little more complicated than that, obviously. But you get the idea, and you bring it to the cloud and deploy it on some virtual machines. We did a little more than that in the first round. We also used SQL Azure as opposed to SQL on-prem. But basically, this is more or less the same stack. So that's the lift, and that's a good thing to do. Well, we want to go to the cloud, but if you really want to be able to scale out and have a real cloud product, you need to do more than that. You need to shift to cloud technology. So I've been also using a lot of our development effort on that. And what that means that you take your architecture and you part it you divide it in smaller services, which you can deploy on various clusters, and that allows you to scale out and have be able to reach a hyperscale. That allows you to also reduce your COGS and the cost of your data center. And at the same time, it gives you a more granular monitoring and diagnostic capability instead of, if you have something going wrong with the NSD, it's the old NSD you have to figure out, what's wrong with. So you have to look at the whole logs, and the diagnostic can be a little bit hard. While when you have smaller services, it's a lot easier to figure out what goes wrong. So that's basically the shift. We're not done with the shift. We're still working on it. I'm not going to go in all the details of this, but that was just to give you a little bit of insight in what's going on behind the scene with this whole effort. So if you want to know more about that, Camille and Constantine are going to give a session today at 4 o'clock where they're going to tell you all about building the Dynamics 365 for financial service. So you get a lot more insights in that. All right. Now, that was the whole cloud thing. Thomas and I, we can't wait to show you all the cool stuff we have in the product. And I will start right away with one of the coolest things, which is the Outlook integration. So then we switch over to my demo machine here. So if you recall last year, I told you a little bit about some of the work we did with the client. And we did a lot of work with our web client to modernize it and to allow it to run in various browsers and various environments. And this year we were able to leverage some of this architecture to integrate very closely with Outlook. So what does that mean? Here you see they have a couple of emails. Let's say I got this email from one of my customers. From the Canon group, and he's asking me for a quote for some items. And you notice up there I have installed the Outlook add-in. So that's the NAV Outlook add-in. It's an Office app which you can download and install from the store. And once you've configured it, I can do a few really cool things. So for example here, I know that this is one of my customers. So if I go and click Contact Insights, the add-in fires up. And it goes into NAV and shows me the information about that customer. So what's important to realize here is that what you're seeing here on this side of Outlook, this is actually the NAV client. This is a web view, and this is a real fully functional web client embedded into your Office experience. And I can do anything here I want. I can go and look up some financial information on my customer, any action. I can click any of the tiles. And moreover, this page is a normal NAV page. So if you want to go and customize that page, you can do that. Just go and find that page. You can add more actions. You can change the layout. You can add more code to it. So you can do all of these things. Now, in that scenario, I've looked up that customer. And maybe I want to actually do the sales quote from here. So instead of switching context and go to NAV, I can just go here and use the ID and say new sales quote. And that's going to bring me to the new sales quote page, and I could just fill it out here according to what this customer asked for, and post the sales quote, and it's going to be emailed directly from here to my customer. So another thing the Outlook app can do, here's another email where this customer is asking me something about a quote. And there's the word quote, and there's a quote number in the email, so the add-in can detect that, and then I can go and click document link, and again, I will be brought directly to the quote in question for that particular customer. And for example, here the customer is asking me to check the discount, so I can go and fix the discount on the line if I want to adjust it as my customer asks. So a lot of cool scenarios enable with this close integration. And if we switch back to my slide, so you'll see more of that in the session with Orina, Aigo, and Andrea about building cool experience with NAV. They'll show you more about the whole add-in integration. And with that, I will hand it over to Thomas, who is going to talk about notifications.
Thank you. So, first of all, notifications is a new thing that's put into the product in 2017. And the basic purpose of notification is, well, to notify the user of something and have the user making a choice. But we already have that today by use of the confirm dialog or the message dialog. But there's a difference here between these two things, that it's optional. You don't have to answer this thing. We can also talk a little bit about where it comes from, because it actually comes out of the development we're doing for machine learning. Vincent will talk more about that later. But imagine that you have machine learning running and suddenly we figure out some condition we want to ask the user about, irrespectively of which dialogue that particular user have open at that point. Where do we put such a message? How do we do that? You know, and those things kind of force it into think about notifications in a different manner, not using the usual confirm or message. And if we can do that in the platform to kind of do notifications to you guys, why not enable that for the AL language and allow you to create great solutions in that regard? So this is exactly what we did. Let me just switch to that one. Yeah. Thank you. So. Good old Seaside. So let's look a little bit about how you do a notification and what it looks like. So you have the good old customer card. I just did a simple change on the customer card. I put in an action. Just show you what I did. A simple action here, and the code on this action just opens up a notification. And here's how it works. You declare a variable using a new type notification, and then you set up the message for the notification, what you want to display, all the possible actions that the user can select, then the scope, whether it's a local scope, and local scope basically means that you're running it on the active page, whereas global scope will mean, when we do it, because we haven't done it yet, will mean that it comes up kind of in the active page, but it follows you around. If you close the active page, you can think about moving to the at any point active page, and so forth. Currently, we only support the local scope, meaning that the current active page, if you close that, the notification goes with it. And then when you're done with that, you call send, and that means fire and forget. Now you send this one, and you see in the two actions, I register which code unit method to call if the user select those. If he just close the notification, you'll never see a callback coming back on this, which kind of makes it optional. How does this play together with events? Beautifully, because the method you're setting up as being the callback can be a published event. So you get to decide whether you want to call a method of your own or you want to call into the method stub of an event you declared. You can do both. Okay, so let's see this in action. So what I'm doing here is just make a notification with time. So let's run this one. And we'll see here my notification test. When I do that, you'll see the blue line coming up here. Time is now something. And then I get my two options, go back or time travel. And these will then call into my handler methods. If I click it again, let's say we have multiple notifications, they'll just stack up here and you'll have a down arrow, and now you can see both of them as they come there. The beautiful thing about this is it also integrates nicely with extensions and other people's notification. If we just look at this, I also installed an extension here in this system that allows me to do lookup of British postal codes into addresses. So if I edit this particular guy's postal code and type in, let's say I go here, What the heck is this?
Edit.
Okay. I'm in view mode, okay, that's why. Fair enough, doesn't matter. So if I edit it, I'll have other notification blending in with the notification which is on top right now. And that's actually, that's beautiful. If we look at the handler code, what gets done here, you also see two things before I go to the handler. You see the set data call here. I can transfer any state I want to transfer through the notification here. So in this case, I'm transferring the customer number, and I'm transferring a called from parameter that I want to use myself. If I go to the handler code over here, and look at this, you'll see the handler basically just gets the same notification object, and now I can use the get data to get my state object back so far. And if I try to get state from something which wasn't there, I just get blank. In this particular case, I can go and see, you know, my customer number is this and so forth, and I can put in handler methods for all the options that I had there. So going back to slides. So basically, what we did here, we added, again, the way to do notifications in the system. We talked a little bit about the global scope is not here yet, only the local scope, and that's it. Notification is something that we're going to use heavily in correlation with machine learning, with extensions and so forth, especially when we get further on how. And you should think about using this as a way of communicating with your users. Thank you. So, Vincent?
Yes, thank you, Thomas. So, every year we also do some things about the client and they try to make it a little better and a little cooler. And this year is no different. So I'm going to show you a few of the cool things we've introduced this year and in NAV 2017. And again, I'm only scratching the surface. There's a lot more, and you'll see in the session on the client how much of these things we've done. But I'll start with the first feature, which is the pictures. You've already seen a little bit of it in the views that Thomas showed you before. So this is the good old item list. And you'll notice what's new here is on the top here we have these three new icons. So I can change the view here to what we call the brick view. And there is no pictures here because there's no pictures on all items, but some of them have. So you see if I scroll down, I'll get some of my items with pictures. So I can just go and you can just go and upload pictures on each of your items, and we'll take care of the scaling, storing in the database, and all these things. I have a filter here which filters on all the items which do have pictures. So very nice view. We have heard a lot about NAV being very white. Not too much picture, not too much colors. So here we go. You can put all the colors you want with your own pictures. This is another view, which we call the brick view as well. And again, so you can see here on each item we display some of the information. You see here we have the item number, the number of items on stock, and all that. So this is fully configurable through metadata. And again, Orina, I go and Andrea will show you how that is done in Seaside. It's very, very easy. And pictures are also supported on card pages, so you can have picture on the side. And you can do all the things you expect: import, export, delete, and add on pictures. We have that also. It's not only for the desktop client, but let me show you on the phone. We have the same picture on the phone. If I pick my customers here and my contacts, you'll see I have also all the cool pictures on my customers as well. And again, this is the mobile version of the brick view, where you can select which information you're going to show on that from your data on each brick. So that was. Let me go back to my slides here. Is that the one? No, that's the one. Okay. So that was the new NAV cool look. I hope you like it. And there's a lot of possibility to make a very cool user interface with these. And with that, I'll hand it over to Thomas, who's going to talk about another cool feature, but that's on the server side now, about monitoring logs.
Sure, thank you. So log monitoring is something that we've been asked to do for a very long time. And how many of you have ever been in situations where your system were logged by a user doing something, and now you are at the second user trying to access, and you get blocked, and you really don't know why? Somebody else is blocking the thing you are getting at here, you don't know why. How many have tried that situation? Yes, okay, yeah. Thank you. There is help, guys, and it's coming now. So what we did was we developed a feature that allows you to see the first user. That's basically it. I'm going to show it in a second, but the good thing here is that whenever you do something where you do a lock, the first guy getting the lock, he never sees any trouble, right? And then the second guy, 10 minutes later, trying to do the lock, gets blocked by a report running or somebody else doing something. But now we provide a means to actually let you know of the first guy, which has always been the problem here. So getting to locks, or tracking down logs involves, figuring out these things here. So, who gets blocked? That's easy. That's you, right? That's when you kind of have the customer in the phone, asking why am I getting blocked? So, talking to the guy number 2, that's easy to identify this. What they get blocked on, well, might be a little bit more difficult depending on the scenario. If you're touching 3 tables, you need to figure out whether it's table A, B, or C. But it's still manageable because you know what this particular user is doing. But then you get to the point of, identifying what he's getting, or who is holding the lock of, let's say, table B, that you came, to know that it's table B, but who holds that lock, and why was that lock taken, and from where? And this we're going to talk and show a little bit about here. So move over here. So again, I have a small demo here. Let me just show you the code I have here. It's actually pretty easy. I'll just run it. That's actually easier. So I have here a page. I have 2 actions in here, and these actions are going to take a lock on a record, bring up a dialog, and take a lock on another record. And the other button does it in reverse order. So if I do this, I can create both waiting for locks, I can create deadlocks. If I do it, both of them, take lock A, take lock B, print a dialog, and wait for the other one, I'll have a deadlock. So let's just try to run this. So I do lock 1 here. And now I get to wait, because I already have this running. There's already somebody holding lock 1 at this point. So I'm kind of, what's going on here? How many do I have? Who's waiting for what? And how is this? And so forth. And now I have help here. I can go into C-side, debugger, and then database logs. And if I go database logs here, it'll bring up a window. And here in here, I'll be able to see which database logs that are active right now. So let's see what this comes up with. It will show at this point that there should be several logs since I was blocked here. It's opened up a new instance of C-side because the other instances that are open already, or of Dynamics, because the other instances that are open, they are blocked. So we get a new one here. And there we go. So we have, in this particular situation, 3 logs right now. So 2 people are having a log, and the one I tried before is this one. He's waiting. Now, to make it a little bit annoying here, I'm running as the same user, but you will actually be able to see the different users having these individual logs. And even better, you can see here the code unit and the method that grabbed this log, and what is the current object that is being logged. That's an extremely beneficial thing to get, because now you actually, when you do have these logs, you can just go to the database log window and see which logs are currently in place. We did something else. Let me just get rid of all these log windows we have right now. I'm just going to close out these. just to make sure we start from scratch. I think we are about to be here. Okay, so, and to make sure, I just go back to the log window and say which logs do we have right now. And again, I can update this window, of course, and see, okay, now we have no logs. It's updated itself periodically, but you can also press refresh, of course. So right now I have absolutely no logs. Another thing we did in deadlock situation. So, you know, you got the dialogue earlier saying, another user did something, you got deadlocked, whatever, so please restart or retry your operation. And we were kind of asking ourselves, as part of our, you know, looking into UI experience in general, why do we bring up that dialogue? Because what's the user going to do? He's going to retry. Why don't we just do the retry for you? So we did that. So in NAV 2017, whenever you do something that results in a deadlock, that'll mean that one of the sessions will be, you know, kicked off, the other one will succeed. And the kicked off one will then automatically go back to the action that was taken at this point and retry that action. And let me show that. So if I open up the first log here now, I locked row 1000, and I'm about to lock row 1001. Over here I do the opposite. So here I locked 1001, and I'm now about to lock 1000. Now if I let both of these go, they will deadlock each other at this point. What happens then is one of them will succeed, and the other one will come back to the dialogue I'm seeing here, because it will retry the action automatically. So I do this, and I do this, and then after a second the deadlock hopefully should be detected. There you go, and you see number 2 succeeded, and number 1 simply retried the action and got back to the dialogue saying, okay, so the user kind of, okay, I'll go ahead with this. And when you do that, now it succeeds because the other one was done and does not block anymore. So we did 2 things here. Get back here. So what we did was that we introduced the database log, and we introduced a virtual table where you can see all the logs, what's going on here, and then we introduced a page to see it, and the ways of having automatic restart whenever you have a deadlock. I think this is phenomenal, and it's already helped our own developers a lot looking at this. Now, additional things is when you do have deadlocks, that's not something you really want. Try, by the way, can you try to scan the QR code here? Where you kind of, this is an experiment to see if you can actually scrape it off the screen. Let me know whether you succeed doing that. It's possible to set up the NAV system to actually put deadlocks with full traceability into the event log. And the instructions on how to do that is presented by this QR code. What happens then is you'll get, you see on the right side here, in the event log, you'll get the offender, the offending object, both whether he was the victim or not, being killed or not killed. But then you'll get again which code unit was it and how and so forth. There's only one limitation in this. It's more or less for free. There's no performance impact of this. But there is a limitation. That is, you can only run a single NST. If you have multiple NSTs and you have this deadlock situation, we are not able to track sessions on a different NST. So there you won't be able to figure out who it was, so to speak. But if you run in development mode or run with a single NST, all what you see here is in NAV 2017 ready to be used. Super. And with that, I'll leave it to Vincent to talk of further client improvements.
Thank you, Thomas. So back to the client. I hope you guys like the log feature. Yeah. So back to the client. There's a lot of things. Again, I'll just show you again a teaser. So on my, let me go back to my phone here. Thank you, Thomas. That's the one here. So one of the thing we added for the mobile platform. So you see, this is my. I showed you that just before. This is my customer list. So when you're on a mobile platform, or especially on a phone, there's a swipe gesture, which is a very natural gesture. You know, I'm sure you know a lot of apps which are using that. So before in NAV 2017, there was no swipe gesture other than on the on the wall center where you could swipe between the different parts. But that's pretty much the only swipe gesture we had. So what we added in this release is the ability for you to, through the metadata, to bind any action to a swipe gesture, either swipe left or swipe right. Swipe right. So for example here, if I swipe right for my customer, I get a sales invoice action. So if I go and swipe all the way, that's going to bring me to the sales invoice page. So I can directly jump to another page and do a sales invoice just by swiping. On the right, you can have up to 3 actions bound to the swipe gesture. So I've taken 3 random actions, and what happens is that when you swipe, you get locked here, and you just go and tap on whatever action you choose. And the way to implement that in Seaside is very easy. You just just pick a page and pick an action. So I have my page action on my customer list here, and if I want to bind, say, for example, this action, any action, doesn't matter, to the swipe gesture, the only thing I have to do is go on the scope property and set it to repeater. That means that the action is going to act on the repeater on the list, which is on that page, and choose the gesture, which is left swipe or right swipe. That's all it takes, and then you have, and then the action you pick will show up when you swipe in your repeater on list on the mobile. So again, one cool thing added to the NAV client, which allows you to do a lot more interesting stuff on the phone. Now let me get back to my presentation, to the slides here. So apart from the visual things, which I just show you a few of, we also do a lot of work all the time to improve the whole architecture of the client. I'm going to talk a little bit about what's going on behind the scenes and some of the improvements we've made. I talked about it already last year, and if you remember, we did a lot of work last year to go to what we call the single page app, where instead of doing the classic request, generate HTML on the server, serve the HTML back, display on the browser, we went to what we call single page application, where you display a page, you get the first page from the server, and then from there you just manipulate the UI in the browser. So we've come a long way from the traditional request response model to this single page application to get a much more responsive web client, and we did even more work on that this year. So this was how it looked like before. We still had a lot of communication back and forth to the IIS. So the flow is click some action, the browser goes to the IIS requests a page to the NSD, we get a page in the metadata, and the response in the browser, and then we get some HTML for that page, and finally we get the representation of it. This is how it looks now. So a lot less interactions, which will give you a much more responsive web client. And what that means that a lot of the controls now that instead of being rendered on the server side are getting rendered on the browser side. And that's a really good thing, because that put a lot less load on your server, and it allows you to scale a lot more. Of course, it has so yeah, this is the number of ASP.NET Controls we have had through the different releases of NAV. So when we started with the web client, we have quite a few of these. So it's for the blue bars are for the sales order list, and the gray one for sales lookup. That's just an example of 2 pages. And as you can see, you know, throughout the release, there's been an ongoing effort. We've been reducing the number of controls we had on the server side and move everything to the client side. And today, we are proud to announce that we don't have any more control on the server side. So everything is happening client side. And these kind of changes allow us to do, you know, the Outlook add-in I showed you before. This is one of the things that becomes possible. We can, you know, basically surface the web client in any HTML environment without. That's the kind of scenario it allows, as well as enabling, you know, scaling out. So this slide is a bit. Don't look at it too much. I'm gonna, you know, but basically what it says, it has some influence on how. You know, it puts some more load on the browser because the browser has to do more work when we do that. So we did some measurement, and you see it has, you know, very little impact on the browser. A little bit of impact on the browser, but still, you still get a very responsive browser when you do that. All right, so. Just briefly, we also put a lot of work on updating our platform to support the newest platform. You know, this is the world that is constantly moving. We get new releases for Windows Phone, for the iOS and Android. So as of today, we support Windows 10. We still support Windows 8.1, but we're going to discontinue that. So we still support Windows 8.1 for the next year at least. But be prepared. We support Android, Marshmallow, and Nougat version, and iOS 9 and 10. So we updated the whole. You know, while we build new features, we also update our framework and our code base so it can run on these new platforms. If you want to know more, again, I encourage you to attend the session about building cool experiences with Office 365, Outlook, and more. And you'll see a lot more of all these improvements that has been made on the client. Now, a little bit of app feature. So we introduced something new on the app side, which is called item attributes. So let me show you what that is. So if I go back to my environment here. So this is the item list that I showed you before. And if you take a look at the fact boxes, you'll see on the Athens desk, I have something called item attributes. This is new. And have attributes like color, depth, width, age, material description. And I can change that to, you know, something else. So what is that? This is actually this is that data which is not coming from if it is not defined through the metadata in C side. It's data you can add actually at runtime on each item. So I can go and select an item, and you see all these attributes here. So these are the attributes which are available, but I can define a new one. So let's say I want to have something which is called I don't know, size, and it can be so I have to have, this is if I want to add a new attribute, but I can create a new one here, which is called size. And it can be of type, for example, option, or it can be a text, or integer, or decimal. And I can have something here which is, sorry about that. So I can create an option, for example, which is, say, large, extra large, or small, and which will give me the possibility after to add this on each item. But not only I can visualize it and set the attribute on each item, but I can also filter and search for it. So this is like any other field you have on the table. So I can go, for example, and see, give me all the items where the color is black, and that would filter on this here, right? So you can do filter by attribute and say, give me all the items where the color is black. And here we go. So this is, you know, this is a really cool feature. Any attributes of any kind, you can add directly on your items here. All right. Now, Thomas is going to talk about the data strategy. So that's a really exciting stuff, a little bit forward-looking, but here you go, Thomas.
Thank you. So what I love about this drawing, by the way, is the drawer in the cloud already. Have you seen that one? Oh, anyways. So data strategy. This is something that's extremely important for Microsoft, extremely important for NAV, extremely important for you guys, for all of us moving forward. Let me take you a little bit down memory lane here. So in 2009, I was attending this conference where this guy, Pablo, was speaking about RESTful APIs and OData and stuff. I know OData has been around for quite some time, but it hasn't really been uptaken in the services world. And this was I would say, Microsoft's first really big move into using this. And that really came to me as, wow, that was kind of one of the architects' aha moments that you get once in a while, saying, this is really interesting. If you get to a situation where you have services speaking, so to speak, the same language, so it's not like you contact your own service and get proprietary binary format out of it. Now you have something where you actually understand any service. Any service speaks the same language. That would be really, really smart. So the common protocol at that point was kind of introduced, and the protocol was a RESTful API using OData as the implementation. And before we move on, let's just spend a minute on talking about this for a while. So what is REST? Is that a standard? Not really. It's more like an architectural principle, an architectural concept. It's saying it's just a way of describing how you transfer, state, so to speak. But it's not an implementation. It's a set of rules, so to speak. Whereas OData is a REST implementation. So whenever you are talking about we support OData, that basically means you support an implementation of REST through OData. OData itself contains some protocol elements of basically describing elements and properties. So the drawing here basically shows the meta model, so to speak, of what is in OData. And OData has a way of describing itself through this $metadata property, so you can ask any OData service for what does your data look like, and then you can get the full information back. And that's one of the ideas here, that you only need to understand a very simple meta model of elements and properties, and using that you can ask for the, I'm representing a customer and here's all my fields and so forth, but all the fields are described using the OData meta model of element and properties to begin with. The EDM is that also called. Now, having that one in place allowed us a few years later to support OData in NAV, the familiar one we know all about today, where you expose a page or later you expose a query, and then you suddenly have OData coming out of NAV. Now, all this is very interesting and allowed NAV to participate in speaking the common language of OData, so other services could pick up data. There's one thing missing, though, and that's what we called, discoverability. When Delve, the Office product of Microsoft, was developed, they faced the challenge of figuring out where all the services are. Basically, there's no phone book of services, so to speak. So even though I know how to speak to them, I don't know the URL of them, so I can't really contact them. And that made it difficult to develop an application like Delve that's kind of taking all your info and bringing together and so forth. A very interesting app. You should try it if you haven't tried it out. And here you see one of the scenarios they had challenges with. For instance, how do you get to your user list? How do you get to your files? How do you get to your OneDrive file, your messages, your contacts, your whatever all of them require different APIs, contacting Exchange or contacting OneDrive or contacting whatever. All of them spoke OData, fair enough. But you didn't know where the URLs, so to speak, were, and that is a problem. So they addressed this by introducing what we call the Microsoft Graph. It had a short life as being known as the Office Graph, but then it turned into the Microsoft Graph. And the Microsoft Graph is a very interesting thing. That's basically one endpoint. And if you go to that single one endpoint, you'll be able to find all the data in all Microsoft application. And here's the trick. NAV is a Microsoft application. So we will end up being part of this entire thing. And let's just jump to a demo and show you what you can do with the graph. So let me just open up a browser here. So, and I go to the graph.microsoft.actually.com, but you'll end up on the IO. But graph.microsoft.com, that's the link you start with. And that'll bring you to a page where you can try it out. There's a ton of documentation in here. You should really spend a little bit of time on this to figure out what this is all about. It's going to be a vital part of what Microsoft is doing in the future. So I'll go immediately to try the API, but you see up here there's documentation. So there's a lot of help and to find out here. So try the API. They actually put in here a way to kind of put in the URL, see the result immediately, so you know what your services will see when you get there. So let me just sign in. And now I'm signed in. So it suggests me a good starting point. That's kind of the Microsoft Graph /me. Well, that's a good point. So let's try to execute the /me and see where that is going. And what happens now is I get a ton of data out around me, down here, name, title, whatever. This comes out of some arbitrary thing. I don't need to know where this comes from. It actually comes from Exchange, but it doesn't matter, right? That's kind of the me point. Let's say I want to look at something else. I could go me/messages. This is a little bit dangerous because this is actually going to show my inbox, right? But let's say there's not anything nasty on top of my inbox. If I go with this one, I'll basically get a view of the messages I have in my inbox. I see, looking forward to see you at the seminar, somebody writes in Danish, so that's nice. So this is a way to get to your messages. I can go anywhere I want and get all my data. This comes from a different place. I could go through my, let's say, my contact list. If I go my contacts, I'll get contacts out of my Outlook. They'll just arrive here as OData. Klaus Lundström is on top. I created him yesterday because I need to do something with him. So the order here is random, of course. Now I can start doing all the usual OData tricks. So let's say this is a long list, and definitely I want to get rid of Klaus here. So let's just put a filter. So I go $filter equals, and then I can put, let's say, surname equals, let's keep it family-wise, Hejlsberg. If I do this, then now I'm filtering, and this filtering, of course, is done server-side. So I end up, Ole Hejlsberg, that's my dad, by the way. So I end up with my entire family here, and you can keep doing this. There's a lot of parameters supported by the OData protocol that's also available on the internet. You can go order by filtering. You can do projections. If I go select, that's a way of reducing my data set. Let's say I want given name and surname, something like this. So now I get all the Hejlsbergs, only the names. And there we go. There's an Ole, there's an Per, there's an whatever in my address book. So the way you can query this graph means you have one endpoint to get to all the data here. Okay. So now we know that.
And Thomas, the data you get, it's in JSON format, right?
This is in JSON format, yes, absolutely. Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. So let's go back to the slides for a second. So the next thing that comes up is PowerApps and Flow, because now we had a place to put data in a common graph. Now we need some engine that's capable of operating on this graph. NAV can operate on the graph, but we're also putting into the cloud something called PowerApps and Flow. And I want to give you a small demo of what these things can do. This is also going to be a vital part of the Microsoft strategy moving forward. So basically, PowerApps is an engine sitting in the cloud where you can build small apps that takes any data source, OData source, through connectors, and a graph data will flow into PowerApps with no trouble. You can then design screens and whatever and represent it on the net. You'll get an URL, you publish it to the cloud, and it just runs. And all this is a service you can subscribe to. Flow is the same thing. There you can create things, kind of if this happens, then that should happen, and so forth. Let me show you just the tip of the iceberg here. So a demo of this. Thank you, Vincent. So if you go back to the machine here, and we go to the PowerApps.microsoft.com is the starting point for this. Again, you need to sign in, or you can sign up for free to get your account after you sign in. The first thing you need to address is to get some connectors. Before you can start building an app, you need to connect to some data. This is important. So let me see what I have of connectors here. Whenever you do this, there's a lot of default connectors that gets created. For instance, if you in Flow say, if this happens, I want to send an email. It'll ask you, okay, so which email provider? Oh, it should be Outlook 365. Good. And then suddenly you have a connector for Outlook 365, which is why I have some connectors here already, because I played around with this. So if you do this, you'll suddenly discover that you end up with connectors you did not explicitly create. It doesn't matter, because they're there to be used. So the NAV connector, it's in here. If you go create a new connector, you get an option of a lot of connectors, and there's a search box on top. You just type NAV, and you get to the NAV connector. In here, you have to fill out several things, and there's an extra field. Just have to watch out. There's actually an extra field. The company field is at the bottom here. We need to make sure we get that one filled out as well. So what I did here is I gave it a name. I take out the URL, and I get the OData URL from my web services dialog inside NAV. Then I fill in username and password, and here I have two options. Either I can use my real username and password, that's probably a bad idea, or I can use the web key from NAV, and let me just show you that for a second. So if you go into NAV here, you go to the web services, to the users, sorry. Users. And you'll see, if you go inside a user, you'll see down here web service access. If you press this button, it will generate this web service access key, which is a random key, and that is the pair you're using if you don't want to give away your real username and password. So use the admin as a username, or whatever is up here as your username, and then the key down here. Then you'll give access to the service to work inside NAV on behalf of you, so to speak. So putting those in here, admin, and the username, and the company, Kronos at the bottom, you end up creating your connector. I already have one, so that's fine. Having done that, then you can go and create a new app, and I'm going to do this quickly. You get two options of defining apps. Either you can download something, or you can just do it on the web. I'll do it on the web here. And you get into a very simple designer. It's nothing like the NAV designer, but eventually I think even the PowerApps will get to the level of NAV. Anyways, so what I have to do here is I have to select a connector for my app. So I go left side here, and you have all the connections. Let's see what happens there. Here's all the connections. I do the NAV connector. It asks me for a data set. There's only one, but there's an option within PowerApps to operate on multiple data sets. We do not support that in NAV, so we just have one. And then I'm asked which table. This is not a table, this is actually the exposed queries or pages that we're exposing out of NAV. And I exposed my items earlier as a normal web service. There's no magic here. And then I do the connect. What it's doing now is it's building an app for me. Basically take my connector and then take the info from the table. It actually goes query the service. Give me all the info that you provide. So NAV will now deliver through metadata. I have the following fields, I have the following things. So, and then it'll build kind of a default app for me. And this is pretty boring what comes up here. So I can change the layout when it's done. There's all of these awkward moments. Oh, there we go. Let's see if it comes. Something went wrong. Okay, fair enough. So let me just see if we can start. We can do that. Otherwise, I'll just explain it. So the point is that you get to combine your connector. It'll go ask the connector for all the metadata, and having the metadata, it'll do a default application that you can then customize and eventually then publish to the cloud. Then you'll get an URL to that app, and you can run it on your phone, on your PC, and whatever. So let's just see if this comes up. It's pretty new technology, but this is just the tip of the iceberg of an integrated data strategy in the cloud into which NAV definitely is going to participate. Don't be mistaken about that. All right, that's a little better. So let me just choose a better template here. I'll do this one. And when I do this, basically just means I get 4 more fields. You'll see it's kind of a repeater pattern here. And when I go into my app, I can start putting in different things. Text. It's a little boring, so let me do this one. I select the field. Then I have the contents over here and say, here I want the description. And see all these fields. This PowerApps does not know about our items at all. So it queried the service for these. I want to put in the description. I want to put in, let's say, number on the inventory. Here, and yeah, basically, I mean, I can manage, to customize my app here. When I'm done with it, I can just play it, and then I'll have, an app that I can run on my phone, showing this items here. Now, this is not necessarily the most interesting thing to show. I could probably have done a much more integrated demo. The interesting thing is you can start taking these OData feeds from wherever, including the Microsoft Graph, and end up with something, very interesting here. Of course, you can do drill down, and you can do your customizations inside the drill down, which field you want to show here, and options, and so forth. Everything is possible here. When you're done with it, you're going to deploy it or publish it to the cloud. Now let's look at something else here. We can also go look at flows. And flows is in the PowerApps family. That's interesting. Now it jumps to Danish, but this is create from scratch. So I'll go create from scratch. And what happens here is I get the option here of defining a flow in the cloud. So consider it like a workflow engine running separately in the cloud. And whenever something happens, something triggers that workflow, that can trigger something else. And it runs as a service. So you don't need to have your instances of, let's say, Mailbox or whatever up running. It doesn't matter. So let's do a simple one. Again, I would like to show this out of NAV. So I'll type NAV here, and I'll see I have a NAV connector, and I have 2 things I can trigger on inside NAV in connection with Flow. And one of them is when a record is created or a record is modified. So fair enough, I'll go when a record is created. So this then asks me, okay, which record? Again, it's using the connector to NAV, and here it's asking the service all the different tables that we have in here. I can go say, okay, when one of the items is changed, then what? Okay, then I want to add an action. What should that action be? And then you start building up your program, so to speak, your flow. And let's say I wanna send an email, for instance. Okay, Office 365 for Outlook, send an email. Okay, cool. So to whom? Okay, I wanna send it to myself maybe. So I go Thomas. Here, and of course it looks into my mailbox. Just need to spell my name correctly. Find me here. I'm practicing, guys. It's so hard now, anyways. I can fill in a subject. So let's say item. And then I want to put in the description of the item. And that's a good thing because I have all the fields over here. So item, and I go to the description. Doink. Item description was changed. And I can fill in, additional thing here, bring in fields and so forth. And when I'm done with this, I go and create my flow. And after having create my flow, containing I need to fill in a body here. I go create my flow, and then the flow will now start running in the background. So periodically it will ask NAV for whether something have happened and so forth, and if it's happened, it'll start firing mails and so forth. So the point is you're not part of the transaction. This is kind of a notification coming in late whenever something is created, so you're not guaranteed it'll be the same second, but you're guaranteed it will happen at some point. I think this is extremely cool what you can do with these things, and go back to the slides. So if we look and go a little bit back into the PowerApps and PowerFlow kind of operates on the data sitting in the cloud. We have the graph aggregating all the data from Microsoft products, and this is kind of an overview of what we've done for our Dynamics 365 for financials, which is NAV, how we kind of integrated that with the graph. We do two different things. If you look at the bottom of the picture, you'll see the vendor, customer, or other of the NAV entities or NAV tables. They are exposed through the graph. What we've done is we created a converter where we kind of convert the NAV data into CDM format. And that's actually interesting. Let me see if I do have a slide on this. So let me just get back to this slide. We need to explain the CDM. Sorry for that. So CDM is a common data model, and common data model is the last piece that we're missing in the idea of being able to share and distribute data. So the first thing was the OData, so we can talk the same protocol. The graph will be the way where you can discover your data. So you could go to the Me and you can start asking for links, and you'll get a links to a lot of things, and then you can navigate those links and start seeing your everything OneDrive messages, or you can go me/my company/Kronos/my invoices, and suddenly you get your invoices. That's the idea. When we're done with all this, you'll be able to navigate to all the data you can access through the graph. That takes care of the discoverability. Now what's missing in the end is something kind of the common format of the entities coming out. So let's say I go to company/Kronos and read out, a customer. I'll get a customer in quote NAV format. Then I go to company/Northwind and then read the customer. I'll get a customer in the SQL customer format, so to speak, in their demo data, whatever. And those two customers are not alike. So we need to get to a point where we agree what is a customer entity? Which field do we have on a customer? Do we have 2 address fields or 3 address fields or 77? How long is the phone number? And so forth. All these things. And there's a tremendous amount of effort being put into this within Microsoft to align cross entire Microsoft, and we are going to open source this, so to speak, the entire definition of these entities to see if it's possible to align. We'll do it within Microsoft for sure, but see if it's possible to align on what does a customer look like. And of course, it's fully extendable, so it's not like if you want address line 3, you can definitely add your additional stuff to a customer or to a contact or to an item or whatever it is. So The CDM is the model describing these entities, how they look like. And at the same time, Microsoft is also building a repository. So if you don't have NAV, if you don't have AX or one of the other ERP products that usually stores items and so forth, you can just store it in the cloud, so to speak, using, for instance, PowerApps. If you go to PowerApps and say, I want to create a new database and I want to put in items and customers, you'll get entities in the CDM format, and you'll get a backend where you can store these and start doing apps on top of them. So this brings the third side of the triangle, which is, we know what the metadata of the entities will be understood by different applications. And that means at the end that you can take a customer from NAV and post it into another application understanding a customer. That could be, applications coming out of the Office group within NAV, or it could be third-party applications that kind of adheres to the standard of the common data model. So, having known that, this is what we are doing for the Dynamics 365 for financials. So we created an on-the-fly converter, which takes the NAV data as we know it today, because we kind of were faced with two options. Either we change the NAV schema to follow the CDM schema, and that would be a horrible refactoring, so that we're not going to do, but instead we do a conversion on the fly, and thereby create an endpoint where we can expose our data in CDM format. And that gets picked up by the graph, and this is the entire bottom of the picture, and then the graph suddenly exposes NAV data through customers/Contoso/something, and you're able to navigate that through the Microsoft Graph. In other cases, like in the contacts are typically owned by your Exchange or your Outlook 365 account. You maintain them on your phone, you can maintain them in NAV, you can have shared contact, you can have personal contact. There's a lot of variety on contacts. But we need contacts to exist in NAV, but we do not necessarily need ownership of them. So what we do instead is we synchronize with the graph. So we see on the drawing here, we are actually asking the graph for, can we have your contacts? And then we sync them into NAV and keep everything in sync there. And we have concept in the graph of having company contacts and shared contract across groups of users and so forth, and you're going to see a lot more of this moving forward. Last slides in this section will be a little bit about events, notifications, and extensions moving forward. And basically what this slide reads is, we will extend all these mechanisms to support things from the graph. The most important one will probably be what's called webhooks, which is a technology where you can subscribe to changes. If you, like the flow before, if you want to get called when an item is created or a customer is created, it's pretty inefficient to kind of poll every minute or every 10 minutes and so forth. It would be a better model if you can kind of tell the system, please tell me when you created something. And that's actually a protocol that exists today. It's called webhooks, and we are going to buy into that, as well as both the graph and PowerApps and Flow, and we'll end up having a world that operates on this, so everything will be event and hook driven. And the last thing is that added fields and extensions are also here to stay. We'll get back to that in a little bit later in the keynote here, but this is going to also be part of this. So whenever you extend or use extensions in NAV, that will be propagated through to the extensions model of the graph and eventually PowerApps and Flow as well. So that's what I had on data strategy from Microsoft moving forward. Move to next topic, and Vincent.
Thank you, Thomas. So Cortana Intelligence. This is something new also introduced in NAV 2017. So Cortana Intelligence it's a lot of things. It's a lot of services, and here's an overview of all the services which comes under the umbrella of Cortana Intelligence. There's a lot of exciting stuff here. Bot frameworks. We can have some chat or simulated chat with robots and cognitive services, picture recognition, these kind of things. So all these services are available on Azure, and you can go on and play with them. The part we're going to focus on, and the part we've leveraged in NAV is around machine learning. How many of you are familiar with machine learning as a concept? Okay, a few hands. All right. So I'm going to go through a little bit of history and very quickly describe what machine learning is. It's by no means intended to be a complete description. This is a very advanced thing of computer science, but I'll try to give you a little bit of insight of what that is and how it connects to and relates to NAV. So machine learning, you're probably familiar with Deep Blue and the computer, which was programmed back in the 80s to play chess, and that was some of the early stages of artificial intelligence. And Deep Blue wasn't using the principle of machine learning, so it means it was programmed just to play chess and do nothing else. And it takes a bit of a while for them for IBM to get it to beat a professional and high-level chess player. But some of the things it did was take into account who the player was. So there are some rumors that if the program would have been used against another player, it might have lost. As a comparison, there's a game which is called Go. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It comes from Asia. It is at least as complex as chess, and all the attempts which have been made to make a Go program using the same techniques that were used for Deep Blue did manage to beat even some very amateur players. While using machine learning, there's a program today called AlphaGo, which actually has the 9th den of professional level in AlphaGo, which means it's able to beat some of the highest ranked players in the world. But it can also do something else. It could potentially be taught to play another game, and that's the magic of machine learning. So how does that work? So let's say you want to program something as simple as, maybe it's not that simple, but recognizing a picture of a fruit, telling you whether you want to write a program that tells you whether this is an apple or this is an orange, right? So how would you go about that? Well, you can do a lot of things. You can start by analyzing the color, how many pixels there is in the orange spectrum, how many pixels in the red one. That will give you an indication whether it's one or the other. And you can analyze the shape. You can see the orange is more round than the apples, and you can analyze the texture and things like that. And you might eventually get something that works all right. But what if you present your program for a new fruit? Then you have to write even more code. You have to write some new rules. Analyze, maybe rewrite the texture analysis, maybe rewrite the color thing, and then if you want to totally confuse it, you show it something like that, and it's certainly not going to work. Right? So instead, machine learning has a different approach. Machine learning if you want to do that with machine learning, you use a model which you're going to train with some existing data. So you select features, they're called features, and it's also, there's a lot of science and debates on how you select the proper features to feed your model with. But basically it goes something like that. You take things like, for example, weight, the number of pixels in one color or the other, and then you have some training data, which means you have a bunch of data where you actually get you have the answer, you know what that is. So in that case, it's an orange, an apple, and so on. And you take this data and you feed it to your model, and the model will create the algorithm for you instead of you having to write all the rules. So a classic way to do that, and that's also how we implement it in NAV, is what's called supervised learning. So you feed basically your model with let's say 80% of the training data you have, and then you get a result, and then you take the 20% of your training data, feed it to the algorithm you get, and then you can verify how good your prediction is going to be. So that's technical supervised learning. So obviously there is a lot of complexity in setting that up, and you can code it all from scratch and go and play with the Azure services there, which, you know, if you're interested in that, I would encourage you to do. But we've packaged all this for you, so you can access it directly from CAL with a very simple API, where you can do things like forecasting. So I'm not going to go into details, but that's, you know, these are 4 of the methods you can use to do time series forecasting, and that will allow you to do things like sales forecasting. This is in the product, so you can go and look how we implemented that, or even more interesting things like inventory forecasting. So this is all machine learning based, and it works generally. If your data is good, it's going to give you a prediction much more accurate than any other statistical model. That was just scratching the surface. There is a much more in-depth session with Klaus and Casper about how this works and how you can leverage this in NAV 2017. So I encourage you to attend that session if you want to know more about machine learning. So with that, we're going to look a little bit into the future, and Thomas will start by telling you some things from the lab. Thank you.
Thank you. So just in the thing you saw with machine learning, think about these scenarios that kind of emerges by combining a lot of the things that we've seen here today. So think about, from machine learning, you have an algorithm basically coming up with a 82% or 92% prediction that your cash flow is going to go under 1.5 months from now. Then you can put up a notification in NAV that doesn't disturb what you're doing. It kind of comes up on the top saying, watch out for your cash flow, or do you want me to order more or call the bank or whatever you need to do. It could be, item levels going under and so forth. So do you want me automatically to order more? Those scenarios. But then start adding
a lot of cool scenarios combining notifications and machine learning.
But then start adding flow, right? What happens if you start to create flow of saying, if this happens, so I want you to monitor the service in the cloud, I want you to monitor if some of these figures combined with the weather data I can get from Bing, is bad weather there, so I don't need to order my ice creams anyways, and so forth. I mean, all these scenarios, and build flow engines of this and take action on it combined with machine learning, it's going to explode in the future. I mean, we only seen the tip of the iceberg of this. Anyways, that was not what we were supposed to talk about. It's just one of those aha moments, version 2, you kind of get, you kind of see the
ERP system traditionally have been a lot like you ask them some questions, but now you get the opportunity to have NAV telling you, what you should be doing, which is, a totally different thing, and which we think is going to be a game changer within ERP.
And that's a very good point. That is exactly the shift we're going to see. Instead of asking, you're going to be told. Anyways, from the lab, the favorite section that we love to talk about. So today we're going to focus a little bit about extensions, because working with you here on the memory lane, three years ago, the idea emerged within the NAV team. Why do we need to do something with code customization and upgrade problem, because that will be a prerequisite to go to the cloud and to start doing scale. And by the way, it's a pain and so forth. And if we can do extensions and an event-driven model, that will really solve this. So 2 years ago, I was actually here, on stage with Michael. This is one of the old lab slides from that time, sharing the idea of, event-driven mechanism. We didn't have it at that point, but we were thinking about it. We had some, very rogue drawings on it on the whiteboard in one of our offices. What would this look like if we were to build such a thing? What could we do? And we shared this with you. These 2 years ago, and there's both the event model, there's the add a field scenario in a non-destructive way, so you can put it in and take it off and so forth. Very interesting, and we were really enthusiastic about the capabilities such a feature would bring us. And then again, 1 year ago, we actually had it, and we presented it in the product. And this is one of those moments where you kind of go, wow, I mean, this is just really great to see something coming totally from, idea through whiteboarding, through presenting, to discuss it with you in this conference, and then actually develop it and then finally shipping it. So that's super great. This year, however, we start thinking ahead, because we'll share our thinking now on the next level of extensions, where we're going to go with this, and why is that needed. We'll talk about something which we call solution apps. I'll just scratch the surface here. There will be sessions on this that you definitely should go see. And then we're going to share something else which will support those ideas. And Vincent was the lucky guy. He gets to do all the demos on this. I really wanted to do that. Well,
we thought about it. I won.
Have you thought about it? No, I sat on you. Anyways, no. So if we think about the extensions when we developed the first version, so to speak, extension 1.0, we were, I'm not saying limited, but we of course we have to do things iteratively. So we are always limited by the current technology. So if when you come up with something really, really great and we want to do it, we always need to make sure that whatever we have in there continues to work. All the tools that's going to support this, we have to make it work somehow with those. And in this case, doing the extension work was actually pretty difficult due to the kind of absolutely does not know anything about extensions of Seaside. And Seaside is, it's very long time since, Michael wrote that thing, and it's getting old, right? It didn't know anything about extensions, so we were, we didn't know about deltas, we didn't have a model tool, so you saw actually, when we was also 3 years ago, we demonstrated the AMU tools where we could do comparison of text files and generally the deltas and so forth. But all this was done kind of outside Seaside. So to make extension work, we came up with this easy 4-phase process with 9 subphases and 26 steps actually to get the artifact developed for the extensions. And here's what's really going on behind the scenes. Luckily, you are not part of all this, but there's a ton of stuff going on when we're doing extension 1.0 to get this mechanism to work. The important thing, however, is there's only 2 of these steps we really want. And that is the phase 2B, compile, and the phase 3B, commit this or deploy this to the running system. These are the things needed. The rest is just fill out the blanks to make all the hoops and bells and so forth work. The important thing, however, is the process of moving away from code customizations and into a componentized model where you build extensions and you do not mess, so to speak, with the original source code. That is the way to both the cloud and to avoid upgrade hell moving forward. And we kind of were in a situation after having this extension 1.0 out there running that new requirements are turned up. So first of all, we have something we are thinking about for a while, solution apps, which when you're using extensions, you run into the situation that you can do a ton of stuff with extensions. Extensions lives on the rules that they can coexist. You can install them, you can uninstall them. But what about if you run into things like, I want to brand the system, I want to change the top line, or I want to do something to the system where clearly there can be only one doing this. That will kind of be in conflict with one of the rules of extensions that they should be able to coexist. So that quickly led to the conclusion we need some, let's call it hyper extension or extension on steroids that allows you to do extra things, which is not normally possible to do with an extension. So super extension, so to speak. But then we make the rule there can be only one. Because if we do that, then you have the situation where you can actually get to do a lot of things there. One of them could be, I'm not promising this is all something we are thinking about, and could be, you get to override existing code or hijack a method or along those lines to actually be able to change code without doing source code modification, which is important. And if we look at the solution app, the idea, so this is basically what we have in the cloud today with Dynamics 365 for financials. So there's a financials platform, which basically means all the system objects of NAV, right? So all the system tables and user management, extension, install, deinstall, or web service exposure, all these tables that has to do with, you know, maintainability and administration of the system itself. And on top of that, we today put the financials app. The financials app is basically an NAV app that is scaled down to only having a few of the capabilities of NAV, and at the same time extended with all the guides and self-learning and all these things you saw in the marketing slide in the beginning that allows you to go try it out without aid of third party and so forth. And then on top of this, there's the capability of putting apps on top of this. This is what we have right now. Now, we had a lot of requests for, is it possible somehow for anybody to utilize the 365 for Financials cloud, so to speak? And what about something like this? If we were to develop a way to do solution app and offer that to everybody, to you guys, it would look something like this, where we offer a very, very thin platform. It would contain only the system object, essentially. And then you can come with your entire app, including all the functionality of, you know, the full NAV or whatever you want to put in there. That's one way of thinking of what we call thick solution app, because there's the upgrade problem in the cloud comes when you come with the next version of this, but beforehand you will still have to merge all the changes Microsoft did, because you get to build and be responsible of the entire green thing. But where we really want to go at the end of the day would be something like this, where we are saying there's the platform, the thin platform, then there's the base functionality of, you know, the ERP functionality, and then there's a solution app on top, which is basically your app, and there can only be one of them. That's the one that really does the big change. And then you have all the small normal apps or extensions sitting on top of this thing. So this is where we would like to go. This is what we're kind of looking at in the distant horizon, and there will be sessions today talking about more of both extensions and solution apps. So what we need to do, we really need to restart and rethink all this when doing extensions. First of all, we want to get away from all the steps and get back to only compile and deploy. That's basically what we need to do. We also need to stop working with the idea of deltas, and then instead of, well, it's still a delta, but instead of thinking the delta as a source code delta between two things, then actually invent a delta object. So you're basically saying, I want to extend the customer object, and here is my object, and that is an extension object, so to speak, that extends customer, and in there I get to write all the stuff directly, basically being what corresponds to the delta today. But it has to be done in a smart way, so while you're looking at your extension object, just indicating that you are extending the customer should basically bring out, you know, intelligence for the customer object as well, and so forth. So there's some rethinking that needs to take place here. That's definitely not something that will come out of Seaside. Which brings to the fact we don't want it to be dependent on Seaside at all, and we also want to move away from the, you know, binary repository and into operating on text files, so that will be very source code or source control friendly and so forth. So essentially, all this spells that we need to do, you know, a new development environment, and this is where Vincent he won. So damn.
Thank you, Thomas.
Are you sure?
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure. All right. So, yeah, we need to. We've been working on a new development environment, and we're introducing now Visual Studio Code. And as Thomas mentioned, that's going to be in the first round only for extensions. But let's take a look at it. So, Visual Studio. How many of you have heard of Visual Studio Code? Yeah, quite a few. All right. So it's it's something. It's a free tool that which is available for free download. Let me get the right one. Here we go. So that's how it looks like. It's an extensible development environment. You can download it already today for free. It has a bunch of extensions for all sorts of languages. And we are working on an extension for extensions, no pun intended, but for NAV, and which will fully support CL. So that's what you see here. And it has all the bells and whistles and all the advanced features that you expect from a modern development environment. You know, it has IntelliSense, it has word completion. You can see when I hover on various fields and what I type, I get completion for it. It has, of course, syntax coloring, as you can see. And behind the scene, we have starting rewriting a compiler, which allows us to do a lot of new stuff. For example, you know, when you have an error in your code, you see squiggles right away because we do background compilation all the time, and we can tell you what errors we have. And we can jump to references. If I do F12 here, I'm going to jump to the definition of that method. These are just a few things that it can do. It can do a lot more. And again, I encourage you to attend the session for it, where Espen and Michael are going to show you a whole lot more of these. So again, back to the slides here. So this is only for extensions for now, but eventually it's going to evolve into our new development environment for NAV, and it's both for NAV and Dynamics 365. So there's no difference here. And we're going to release a preview very soon, probably around Christmas. We're working on that very hard now to make it available to you guys, so you'll be able to play with it very, very soon. And now one last thing I want to show you, also regarding development. So another cool thing we're working on is what we call in-client design. So here I have my web browser with my NAV running, and you'll notice this icon up there. This is not something you'll be able to see in NAV 2017. This is one of the latest builds we have. And what happens is when I click on this icon and get it to a design mode, which is allows me to do things like, for example, I want to move that field over here, or I want to move it all the way here. And what happens when I do this is that it generates the code for an extension in the background. So I do visual design on that form, and the code gets generated, and eventually I'll be able to download the extension code and continue with it in Visual Studio Code if I want to. But I can do a lot more than that. There's a more button up there. I can go and for example, add a new field to the table here. So I have.
If you get tired doing the demo, I can take over.
Okay. I'm good. I'm good. So I can go and drag and drop fields directly from my data definition there. But I can also create a whole new field. Say a text field and give it a name, and it's going to be added to the table in the background. It's going to be do all the things that you expect for customizing that page. Now, once I'm done with this customization, and I'm playing around with that page and design of that page, I can see, as I do the design, I can see what it looks like on the fly. But I can also, if I want to see, I'm also designing for the mobile as well. So if I want to see what it looks like on the tablet, I just go here, and it doesn't work. Let me try it on this one. Sorry about that. Wrong instance. All right, so let me go back to my customer card here. So I get into design mode, and I want to visualize how my customer card will look like on a tablet. And here I can show it. And this is not a picture. This is a fully functional web client here, which I can, which I can use. So, and I can do the same for the phone, of course. So I get to see exactly how this page is going to look like on these different mobile devices. So this is some of the, some of the improvement I was talking about before about client-side rendering, are allowing these kinds of scenarios. So that's the thing we can do. And again, this all gets generated in the background as extension, which I'll be able to continue working on and write code behind in Visual Studio Code. With that, we're going to conclude the keynote. Thank you. So again, if you want to know more about extension, attend the session with Espen and Michael, which is today at 2 o'clock. Thomas, any final word?
Yep. Thank you once again for attending this conference. More than 1,000 people this time. It's been phenomenal. We'll be back next year for sure for yet another keynote.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure to come here and show you the new stuff to you guys. So we look forward to talking and engaging with you during the sessions, and we'll be around. So don't hesitate to grab us, and if you have any questions on the things you have seen, and go to the sessions and have a great time. Thank you very much.